Welcome to the Unapologetic Entrepreneurship Podcast, where we believe that as entrepreneurs, we get to decide what our business and our life looks like.
And we get to be unapologetic about it.
You're your own boss, so why are you waiting for permission to do things your way?
Here, we ditch the shoulds. No more building a business that looks good on paper but feels bad in your body.
No more following someone else's strategy just because it worked for them or chasing someone else's version of success.
I'm Delia.
And I'm Joana, and this is not just another business strategy podcast.
We are going so much deeper.
We'll be talking about identity, purpose, our inner worlds, and designing a business around the life you actually want to live.
Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to the Unapologetic Entrepreneurship Podcast. And today we are going to be talking all about transitions in episode 2. And this is going to be a 2-part series because we have got so much to say about transitions. It is such an important part of business and entrepreneurship when you are changing as a person and your business needs to change with you. And it can be one of the hardest things to do and one of the hardest things to accept and move through, which is why today I'm going to be actually interviewing Joana because she has been through some big transitions that she hasn't yet shared publicly. And you'll know from the last episode that Joanna's been running Gift Design Studios for the last 12 years, an international award-winning agency with an incredible reputation. But yet there's stuff been going on behind the scenes with your design agency that we don't know about yet. So I would love you to tell us, Joana, what's going on, what's happened, what are the changes and the transitions you've been working through at the agency?
Oh my God. I am nervous, but I'm excited at the same time because I feel that now that on the other side of it, I feel comfortable to share the takeaways from everything that's been going on. I have more clarity as well on like why things happened that way. And if I were to go back in time, what I would have shifted. But in short, I've let my whole team go. And I had been with some of these team members for the past 11 years. So it was a huge transition, but a lot of things led to that. So where do I start, Delia? There's like so many layers to unpack.
Okay. This is huge to let your entire team go who you've been with for almost 11 years. Where did it start? At what point did that moment come in that this might even be something you need to do? Like what happened? Why did this happen? Where did it start?
Yeah. So over the course of 12 years, it has been like a roller coaster. There have been years where it's gotten so tough that I've wanted to quit or I've wanted to sell the agency, but then I would bounce back up and then there we went again. Like we would thrive again and then I'd crash or the agency would go through a difficult period again and then we'd lift ourselves back up. But I think one thing that I could argue would become the catalyst to all of this is I became a mother. I think that's a huge change in any woman's life, especially if you run a business, right? Your priorities suddenly become split. It's not just because I think I would call myself a workaholic. My team would call myself a workaholic. I'd stay in the office until like 9 p.m. And then like quickly go home, grab something to eat, fall asleep, wake up, repeat. And I really just lived for my career, my agency, my team, my clients. And then when my son came along, well, I had to split my focus, right? I wanted to be a present mom. I wanted to be with him. And 2 years later came along my daughter. So I think that was a big piece that started to morph my business. When I had my son during my maternity leave, I also had a lot of time to be on Instagram scrolling and to chat with people in their DMs. And so I started to answer people's DMs on like, how did you grow the agency? How did you do this? How did you get clients? And I just started to like informally coach them via DMs. And I thought, this could be a thing. We've built other group memberships for our clients. What if we tried it for ourselves? And in 2021, we launched the first cohort of the Ambitious Creatives book, Solid, and it was a 6-figure launch. So it was like, oh my gosh, this could actually also be a business. And it was really fulfilling to me. And so then my focus became split yet again.
Mm.
So I would say that's one issue is like when your focus is split between a lot of things, it's hard to juggle, right? It's hard to juggle all of this. Two businesses, two children, and then where's time for yourself as well, right? The other thing was that I've always strived to be a really great leader. I even talked about on Business Insider, I have an interview of how, like, in my first year of business, my two employees quit. And what I learned from that is how I was showing up as a leader. And ever since that happened to me, because they quit on the same day, and suddenly I had no team and I had clients to fulfill. So that was like quite a traumatic episode in my career. I had to learn how to become a better leader. And I think I poured a lot of myself in that. So towards the like later years of Gift Design Studios, instead of being the creative director, instead of being creative, which is what I love and what is part of my DNA and what lights me up, I was focused on being the best leader that I could and having one-on-ones with the team often and seeing their needs. And I think if I were to go back in time, I would have told myself to draw a harder line between, becoming their friend or like being too empathetic towards their needs and what was going on in their personal lives and giving the business what it needed. Because what it needed was like a team that worked well together, that was being productive and essentially happy at work so that they wouldn't quit. But I put so much emphasis in my team and got to know them and their families and their personal problems so well that I kind of like, as an empath, I feel like I kind of took them as my own. Um, and that was another layer of accumulated stress over time. So, for example, I remember one time, one of my designer's mother, she calls me and she's like, "Well, Anna won't be going into work today." And I was like, "Why is her mother calling me? Like, why isn't Anna just texting me?" And she's like, "Oh, because she's like, um, in hospital and she has a lot of fever and they don't know what it is." And I was like, "Okay, what have her symptoms been?" And she was like, she's been throwing up a lot, she's been complaining about her stomach and all of that. And I just remembered like my appendicitis journey. And I had also lost a friend to appendicitis 2 years before.
Gosh.
And I told her, I was like, I started to worry for Anna, like as she was my own child. And I was like, have they made sure it's not appendicitis? They're like, no, they don't think it is. I'm like, but have they like scanned it? Because you can only tell if it's appendicitis through scans. And she's like, no, no, they just think it's a bad virus and they're going to send her home. And then this repeated again and it repeated again. And Anna would come into work and then she'd suddenly have these cramps. And I'm like, Anna, please like fight for the right to get a scan. And that whole like week of her being in and out of work with symptoms was like, even as I'm talking about it, it's like, I feel like that, makes my stomachs turn. And she finally she managed to like get someone who worked at a hospital to get her a scan. And it turns out her appendix was really inflamed. And they're like, oh my God, we don't even know how you're standing. This is like one of the worst appendicitis we've seen.
Oh, wow.
And this was like kind of like at the end of COVID. So they had her tested for COVID before she went into the operation. And turns out she had COVID. So they had to like put her in a different um, space. And they didn't get to her operation for like hours and hours. And in that time, her appendix exploded.
Oh my gosh.
She could have died. And she would have died if she hadn't fought so hard for that diagnosis, right? And then she was out for a month and like I care so much. I still care for my team even though they're like no longer in-house, they're still humans out there in the world living and I just felt so responsible for their health, for their mental well-being, for their how they were living their lives, for their career progressions, that it was like all my focus was on that.
Mm.
And I started to put more focus on that versus what the actual business needed. So, Anna was out for a whole month, and thankfully she recovered really well. In that same month, we had another designer lose a parent to COVID. So then I was having one-on-ones with them, being like, you should take time to grieve. It's not healthy to be at work. And they were like, no, but it's good. I need distraction. And I'm like, but you have to let your body process this loss. And they wouldn't, but then they wouldn't do that great of work. And again, I was like, no, I'm now responsible for their mental health and mental well-being. And I accepted the fact that they wanted to work, but then it wasn't working out. I was like, no, I'm gonna ask you to go on a forced 2-week leave to grieve. Like, honor your dad, spend time thinking about your best moments, go back home, do whatever you need, but you need to process this. And it was like, I remember 2022, 2023, it just felt like these things they just kept happening with different employees. We had my right hand as well. She went through a really personally traumatic experience that she's still healing from. And I always would take them as my own. And, the body keeps score.
It really does.
Like, even as I talk about this, I feel like all of these sensations in my body, and I started to, like, that's when I started to question, like, why are we doing all of this for? Like, all of my team members are struggling. Let me, like, make work more joyful for them. Let me make work the good part of their lives. And I just dedicated, like, my time at the agency to that. It was about, like, finding the clients that would light them up. It was about letting go of the clients that they were like, oh no, not this project again. Which, in hindsight, well, that's not how you run a business. If a client is regular and they want to keep working with you, you keep them, even if the team isn't excited about it. Like, I was just putting them above everything, working on their career progressions, taking them on trips to develop their skills. And I think I lost myself in trying to make their work life the most amazing it could be, which is a good thing, I guess, but at the expense of my own emotional and mental well-being, and then eventually at the expense of the business as well. I think that was one of the main learnings that I took from it, that started to, like, make me feel really burnt out. I was, like, putting them and their mental health before everything, but at my cost. So if someone said, like, I'm having a bad mental health day, I'm like, okay, no problem, stay home, relax. And then I'd be doing their work and mine, I think that's the whole point of having a team, right? Like, we hold each other through the hard times. Um, but I felt like I was maybe overdoing it. Maybe overcompensating for something, like the people pleaser in me was just like giving, 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 giving. You want a salary so you can move in with your boyfriend? You want a salary raise? Sure, here you go. Like, you want more time off? Of course, let's have more time off than any other company here in Portugal. Um, you want to have Fridays off? Okay, have Fridays off. I was just like giving them everything that I thought would make us like a really innovative company that puts mental well-being and motivation first. And I was hoping that that would translate into better work, and it did translate into better work, but it did make it a much harder business to keep profitable. And I wasn't following those guidelines for myself. I wasn't taking personal mental well-being days. I wasn't taking the Fridays off that I had given everyone. And I think that started to, like, create this resistance to growing, this resistance to showing up at work, this resistance to keep getting clients. And then at the same time, I had the ambitious creatives that was really lighting me up. So I was then pouring more energy in that. Um, but with an infrastructure that it didn't need, right? So I had like 7 people for a business that could be run with maybe 1 person and a VA.
Right. Because it's a totally different business model.
Yeah. And then there was also this incident where our accountant wasn't pulling its weight. He had been going through a divorce, and he told us, like, it resulted in a burnout, but he told us, like, not to worry, I will keep your accounts. Um, like, everything will be legal. It'll just be late and I'll pay the fees. And then we start getting these fines for our accounting documents being submitted late. And I was like, I just can't, with all of this going on, I just can't also support your life transitions. Again, I want it to be empathetic. I want it to be the client who understands and who keeps paying him, even though he's not performing. But now with like all of these fines coming our way and us having to chase, it was just like, this is, that's when I started to have wake up calls. Like, I can't just like be everyone's mother, I can't just like keep supporting everyone's personal problems. And so he was like the first person we let go. And when we got a new accounting team, it got to like December and they're like, look, we still haven't had a hold of your accountant. He doesn't answer your calls, like your ex-accountant. And basically, we're coming up to a deadline to submit last year's documents. And if you don't submit it in 2 weeks, you're going to have to pay a $300,000 fine. 300,000
300,000
euros. Yeah. That's what they told me on the
euros.
phone. And I was like, okay, that's not cool. How long can you fix it? And they're like, well, not in 2 weeks. Maybe if we bring on an extra couple of people, but it's going to cost more because we're going to have to bring on an extra couple of people. And I was like, well, how long have you known this? They're like, well, since September. I'm like, so it took you 3 months to tell me? That period, like that Christmas, that it was, again, so traumatic because it's like, you just told me news that you're saying you can't do anything about. I can't do anything about. And I'm going to have to pay 300,000 euros. It's just like, even as I say all of this, like my body's like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like we went through so much.
So much. I can't imagine receiving that call with that number and that information having been withheld from you. And then you
Yeah.
have such a tight deadline.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
I was furious. And Joanna and
Yeah.
I were like, I bet if we had been like male entrepreneurs, they would have told us. Because their
Mm.
excuse was like, we're trying to solve it ourselves and, like keep you from it and like not worry you. I'm like, I am the owner of this business. I need to know these things.
Yeah.
I
My
can't be
job is to
worrying
be
when it's
worried.
too late to fix it.
Right?
Yeah. So we also let them go. Because we're
Good.
like, no, I need an accountant that can be on my team, that can trust me to handle difficult news. Because I feel like that's what I do anyway as an entrepreneur, is like I put out fires. I deal with lawyers and accountants and team members. But yeah, it got to a point where I just started to think about like, wait, what do I want out of my life? Because I want more space in my calendar. I want more fulfilling work. I want more time with my kids. And I want less weight on my shoulders.
Hmm.
And when I looked at everything that put weight on my shoulders, it was like the infrastructure of the business had become something I no longer wanted to carry. And I actually had that realization on a spiritual retreat with Enjoy, which I highly recommend. I came into that retreat needing to be on a drip. I felt like I had no energy left in me. And I went into that retreat not even having read the sales page. I just went because my psychologist was like, you should go to this. And it was in 3 weeks' time. And it involved taking 5 days off. And I just trusted her. And I thought I was going to be sleeping a lot, resting a lot, doing nice yoga. And that with 5 days of rest in a chill place in the country, my body would recover. But no, we did a lot of somatic work. I didn't even know what somatic work meant. So we did like breath work, exercises, a lot of things with our bodies, where we would let out anger, where we'd like express joy, express sadness. We would cry, we would laugh, we would dance. Just 5 days of somatic work, very little sleep. But it showed me that first breath work is an incredible resource to harness like your life force, like your energy, like the Chinese call it the qi. Everybody calls it a different name, but like when you wake up and you have like this energy to like live and go out and do things, and some days you don't, like that's that life force, right? That's that
Mm.
energy that needs to keep flowing through us. And when there's something like a resentment or a block, it just doesn't flow. And that's why we feel tired and unmotivated and feeling like, oh my God, something must be wrong with my health because I have no energy. But what that 5 days showed me was that with a couple of breathwork sessions, I could tap into that energy release some blocks and feel like I had more energy than I've ever felt in my life. And being in that space and connecting with people deeply and being in the country, after 5 days, I remember coming back and I'm like looking around my house and looking around my inbox and thinking like, who told me I needed all of this? I was so happy in the country, just breathing. Like, I want more of that. I want more joy. I want more time in nature. I want less stuff in my house. And I think again, that was another catalyst for being like, life doesn't need to be like I've built it. I can
Yes.
be unapologetic about how I transform my business so that I can feel the emotions I want to feel in my day to day, so I can feel lighter, so I can have my joy back and can work on things that truly light me up and pull me forward, like this podcast. So, yeah, I think, did I cover everything?
I mean, what a journey. What a journey. And then to have that moment of like coming back from your retreat, I can almost envisage you walking into your house and looking at everything and being like, hang on. Yeah. Do I need all this? Do I want all this?
Yeah.
And
Oh my God. I remember like first opening my laptop and being like, wow, these colors are so bright. You know, hadn't been having been disconnected and in nature, it's like, whoa. You know, it's like, you know, the new trend, like dopamine hit decor where everything's like really bright because it gives you that dopamine hit. It was like my nervous system was so regulated, it was so chill that even opening my laptop was like, whoa, this is too much. Like, less, please.
yeah, I get that. And what a beautiful moment to be able to reconsider everything. And I think so often in entrepreneurship, we are built to keep building, right? We are told, okay, what was my growth last year? How can I increase it next year? How can I increase? How can I build? How can I grow? How can I scale? And yet we don't talk much about going the other way, right? Reducing something.
Mhm.
And how did that feel when you had that moment of wanting to, I mean, it's almost like downsize, right? Like, you know, to shift
Yeah.
your business, but in the opposite direction of the way we're told we're meant to go. How did that feel? How did that sit? And what happened next?
Well, this was like a 2-year transformation, so I had a lot of resistance to it. I started to try and like keep the whole team, but just like make the work more manageable, hoping that if I slowed down and took care of myself, then I'd be able to like bounce back up and pay everyone. So I really held on to them for longer than I should have because it was my identity, right? Like I'm a studio owner, I have a big team. It felt like that would be the kind of thing that I would say when I would introduce myself when people would ask, "What do you do?" And I felt proud, you know, like, "Oh, yes, like, have a payroll of 7." But why feel proud of something if it's, like, eating you up inside and taking a toll on your mental health and your physical health? I thought that I could use therapy to become a leader that doesn't lose themselves so much in my team's lives and that I could work on myself to be coping better with my team. But it turns out that as the months kept um rolling by, it's very hard to change relationships that have been existing for 11 years, right? There are patterns that are so ingrained in us, expectations that we have from each other that are hard to shift. And I just wasn't managing to turn that around. Um, and it was still weighing a lot on me. And so not only that, but like things started to happen in my personal life as well. Like you remember on the eve of the Ambitious Creatives Live, our first live event here in Portugal, my aunt died suddenly of a aneurysm. Just she was on the sofa watching a film, had a headache, and then died. And I had to, on the eve of our event, drive 3 hours to Lisbon, where I cried the whole way there, go to the funeral, drive 3 hours back, and then be like, okay, well, now this goes in a box. And now we go. Game mode is on, and I am happy, and I'm going to be on stage, and da da da. I didn't have, like, here I am telling my team to take 2 weeks to grieve and process, and I would give myself zero time as if I'm some sort of superhuman that can handle it all. And I pride myself on being quite resilient, but now I'm understanding like the body accumulates.
Mm.
I've just been told that I have like two bulging discs on my spine and I'm gonna have to do physio. So like the warning signs are there, right? Like I've been carrying too much and it's time to like take care of myself. I'm still like in business. We're still taking on clients, we're still working with freelancers, but it's just a much more manageable and nicer rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask actually. What is Gift Design Studios today? So you are still working, you're still taking on projects.
Yeah. Like we're building 3 websites right now. I have 2 freelancers that I call upon for design. My husband does the development, and that keeps him happy and busy and contributing to the agency, but it's just much smaller, right? On a much smaller scale. Um, but it's been more fun because I've been playing more with design, getting back into the creative direction because now with less clients, I have more time to do that. And so that feels really good. Not
I love
only
that.
that, but to not have to worry about like, how are we going to make payroll?
Yeah. Yeah. How does it feel now? So you've gone through this huge transition. How are you feeling on the other side of it with everything you've been through? How does it feel in your body now? And how is it affecting how you're showing up every day at work?
I think it's all a work in progress. I'm still now even being like, okay, well, what does my body need? Because I feel that's the piece right now that I need to focus on because of like the discs in my spine. But um, the hardest person to let go was Joanna, my right hand.
Mm.
Um, because she had been with me for so long and she had taught me so much and she had carried me through um so much. She was the one team member that would never ask too much of me. If anything, she asked too little, and she gave a lot of herself
Mm.
to protecting my time, to helping me as much as she could. Whatever she would identify as like, oh, that's something I can take off Joanna's plate, she would. And for a long time, she made my life so much easier. She made work pleasant. And so that was like, I don't want to let you go at all. I'm just like, she's my business wife. I'm like, we're going to be in this forever. But it had also been raising her salary quite considerably because of the amount of work she was taking on and responsibility. And it became, again, like a huge weight on my back because it was by far like the biggest chunk of payroll. And that decision was really hard. We tried to figure out ways to make it work. We both cried a lot in the office. And and then after I let her go, we went through a period of not speaking, and I think that was just us. I don't think it was intentional. I think it was just us grieving this relationship that we had, like this end of a chapter that was like a decade long. But more recently, we reconnected on a night out, and then we booked another dinner, and then like went clubbing till 4 a.m. and it was so healing. And I think that's why I'm ready to talk about it now, is because I've had that like healing reconnection with Joanna, and we're both at peace, and we both can see the positives that came from it.
Mm.
And who knows, maybe we'll work again in the future. I don't know. Like it's just I think it's what I needed at the time, and turns out it was what she didn't know she needed either, at least from what she shared with me.
That's beautiful. And you mentioned something earlier, which I think was really interesting. You said your identity was being a owner and having that payroll of 7 staff. And, this isn't something you just did for a little while. You built this agency up for 12 years. Before this current team that you let go, you had hired and fired for 10 years. I know plenty of other stories from the past that show like, just how you did show up as such a strong leader running that studio. And how does your identity feel now? Like, how is that all sitting? And how are you identifying as an entrepreneur today?
It's I think I'm still like in that discovery phase where I'm giving myself permission and being unapologetic about playing with a lot of different things, right? So we launched a challenge together, and now we have this idea for this other program that is completely different to anything that I've done, but it's something that my soul is like full body, yes, like we need to do this. I've been painting. I've been doing websites as well. Like I'm doing so many different things that to myself, I think my identity is just like I'm a creative who creates things. That's my identity. Now, how I communicate that to other people is still a work in progress because sometimes it's just easier to say, yeah, I run an agency. End of story. Like, let's just make it simple instead of saying I do all of these things. But to my kids, for example, my son is like, oh, wow, mom, you're so many things. You're a YouTuber because he sees my Instagram reels. You're you're a painter, you're a teacher, because that's what I say when I go and, like, do the ACBS calls, is like, "I'm gonna go teach my class." And they're like, "Oh, you're a teacher." I'm like, "Yes, I'm a teacher." "And you're a designer, and you build websites, and you're an author, and you're a speaker." Like, "Yeah, mommy's all of those things, and I love being all of those things."
That is so beautiful because we are
Yeah.
all of these things. Our identity isn't one thing. It's like, who are we when we remove all those labels? And there's all these different parts of our soul and our being and the creativity that comes out in these different ways. And I love what you said about giving yourself permission to experiment and play, because I think it is actually one of the single most important things to do when you make a big decision and you're moving through that transition and you're still kind of in the messy middle, even if you have had closure on the sort of more healing side of it, is you have to play an experiment. The worst thing you can ever do, I think, when you've made a big transition is to box yourself in,
Mhm.
and be like, okay, now I'm doing this thing. Like, that is so unhelpful. Like, the best ideas come when we are creating and playing and trying different things and being open and seeing what opportunities come to us and being open to receive them, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, um as I've gone through this transition, being open is very important. It's like, okay, well, this chapter is sort of ending, which is kind of still going, right? Like I'm still serving our clients at Gift Design Studios, but I have more free time now and I have more space to accept other things. And the first thing I started to do is just like reconnect with people and old clients and people in my network and seeing like what are people doing. I've actually had conversations where I was almost brought in as a marketing director for a new startup. I was open to exploring that and seeing where it would take me. And just yeah, like so many ideas crossed my mind. I remember like when that's for the next episode, but like you did this list of like all ways that I could make money. And I think it's just allowing yourself to brainstorm and to like see what lights you up. And I think I'm very fortunate to have an audience that I've built over the past years where I could be like, hey, so I just had this idea. Do you want to come along? And maybe it'll make me some money, maybe it won't. But like the challenge was really fun to do together. And now it's like, okay, on to the next thing. What can I do next? And tapping into what brings me joy, but also tapping into my network and seeing where can I help people in different ways?
And coming back to that as an anchor, right? How can I help
Mhm.
people? And I feel like we should do a whole other episode on actually the merits of creating a personal brand like you have, because you're right. It carries you through
Yeah.
transitions and different things. It gives you, and it also means you have your community. You're not doing this actually on your own, even though it probably feels very isolating in the moment. But I just want to wrap up this episode by saying how brave you've been, because as a friend who was also there as you were going through this and seeing you go through it all, handled this with such awareness, such grace, such deep consideration. And it was a deeply brave and I know heartbreaking decision for you. So I just want to say well done, because it was super brave what you've done. And I think bravery is always rewarded.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it took a lot of courage, that's for sure. And to go through the pain, right? But it was the right thing to do, and I am better on the other side. And so is everyone else.
They always are. They always are. Like, so much is the anticipation of something, the thinking about what can happen. We think about all the possible outcomes, right, of a decision we're making. And our brain will so often attach to the ones that are the most traumatic. And very
Yeah.
rarely are they the ones that come to life, right? The show always goes on.
Yeah. And, like I follow everyone who's been through GIF and I look at what they're doing now. Everyone is better off. Like people have started their own businesses, like sometimes in a completely different field, taken jobs in a completely different like I know one of our designers who was really methodical and perfectionist, and he'd like get really angry when like people weren't like being following the grid and the systems and whatever. Now he's a project manager where he gets to be that leader for that team, and I think he's doing really well. So it's great to see that sometimes endings can give space to amazing new beginnings.
It really does. And it's exactly where everybody is meant to be. I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up this episode. Joanna, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for interviewing me and making space for this.
You're so welcome. And if you're listening to this and want to hear more about transitions, then check out our next episode because we are not done talking about this topic.
You're up next on the hot seat, Delia.
See you there.
See you then.
Bye.
That's it for this week. If you enjoyed this episode or if something here landed for you, share it with a friend.
Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss next week's episode.
And if you can, please leave us a review. It really helps new people find us.
See you next time.